What I'm about to share with you is going to have a huge impact on the decision that you make to buy land. It's going to save you a whole lot of money, and most importantly, it's going to prevent a whole lot of stress. So grab a pen and a piece of paper. You're going to want to take notes. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel. My name is Wayne Turner. For nearly 30 years, I've bought, flipped, sold, built, done just about everything when it comes to real estate. Everything to do with real estate. Buying land, flipping land, selling land, buying houses, flipping houses, owning rentals. You will learn right here on this channel. Now, the number one most preventative measure that keeps people from purchasing a piece of land or making that decision to purchase land is money. You got to have cash, right? But you don't need a whole bunch of cash. Actually, you only need 10% to buy a piece of land. A lot of people are not aware of that. And they say, Wayne, there's no way you can't do that. I beg to differ. Local credit unions and local small town banks will gladly support your purchasing of a piece of land with only a 10% down payment. Now, there are some stipulations, some hoops, if you will, that you have to jump through when it comes to purchasing property. First is the appraisal of the property. That's when you determine the value of the actual land. Now, any bank or credit union, they're going to want to know and make sure that they're securing a loan, they're giving you money based on the value of that asset. And that asset is that land, so they're going to want it to be appraised. That typically runs around $400, and that's something that you have to pay for. But look, just because you find a piece of property, you make an offer to purchase that piece of property and you get it worked out between you and the landowner, don't run out and have it appraised, because they won't and cannot rely on your appraisal. They have to send an appraiser out to appraise the property. They'll take care of lining all of that up, but you will have to pay for it. Now, if you're like me and most people, paying $400 to be able to get a loan on a piece of land that you really like and you want to build a house on or put a double wide mobile home, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It's worth the $400 that you got to spend, and you're only going to have to put 10% down on the property. But rest assured, it's more than just securing the loan based on the property. You have to be able to pay for it. And of course, they're not just going to take your word to pay for it. They want to verify your income, what they call VOE, verification of income. And they're also going to want to make sure that you have the credibility to pay for it. You've got a good background in paying your bills. How they do that is they pull your credit score. They typically do what they call a tri-merge credit report. Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. They pull that and look at all three scores. If you've been late, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days late, and it's beat your score down to below a 620, you got to get it over that. I always tell people, before you go talking with any bank, pull your credit score. You can go to myfico.com or Free Credit Report or Credit Karma, one of those, but you'll want to pull your credit, make sure your credit score is over 620. If you're curious to know, okay, my credit score is not 620, how do I get that up? I'll put another link to a video here. You can watch that after you watch this one. It'll get your credit score over 620. Now, once you get your credit score over 620, as I mentioned, they're going to want to verify your income. Once they verify your income, they're also going to look at your debt. They're going to look at, okay, what do you have going in each month? What do you have going out? If you have a whole lot of credit card payments, truck payments, medical bills, car loan, whatever it may be, they'll look at that. Look at that, I'm walking across a plank. Isn't that cool? Walking across a plank. So what they'll do is they're going to look at all that information and they're going to say, okay, based on this, you have money left over at the end of the month to be able to pay an XYZ payment. Now, keep in mind, your interest rate on a loan is going to run around 7 to 8%, which is not bad. I always tell people, don't get hung up in that. It's not so much the cost of the money, it's the availability of the money. To be able to purchase a piece of land and build your house and do whatever you want to with it is pretty valuable. And keep in mind too, most of the time this is just a short-term payment. You know, it's interesting, I get my exercise in. I actually really enjoy just walking around on the property talking about land and teaching you and others about land. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. It lets everybody else know, hey, this dude's got some good stuff going on and it's beneficial to me, it's beneficial to you. Now, the reason why I say short-term payment is most people have an end goal in mind to be able to put a home on the property, whether it be a double wide or modular home or just a traditional custom stick-built home. They want to have an end, and the end is putting a home on the property. Now, the best way to do that is to get with a bank or a credit union and see if they will do a construction perm loan. Oftentimes, a small bank won't do it, but they'll have a sister company, if you will, which construction perm loans can be a great way, a very money-saving way to build a house, to actually buy the land and build the house. And here's how they work. The entity, the credit union or the bank that loans you the money to buy the land, they also loan you the money to build the house. So you can build the house yourself. Typically in most states, you can build your own personal home, but you have to check state for state, it varies, or you may have to have a contractor. But either way, the same bank that will loan you the money for the land will also loan you the money to build the house. And what they'll do is roll that into a permanent finance loan. They'll roll that into a permanent loan. So you can still actually buy a piece of land, have a house built, and still get an FHA or a conventional loan on that property from the same entity that loaned you the money for the land, thus the construction perm loan. Now, once that process is complete, you're going to put it on a 15 or a 30-year mortgage, pretty much whatever you prefer, and most importantly, whatever you're approved for as far as getting qualification, because you have to go through the same qualification process when it comes to buying the land as it does to actually getting that construction permanent finance loan. You see, they're going to look at, okay, here's the value of the cost of the land, here's the value of the cost of the build. They're going to add the two. They're going to give it an appraised value. So remember when I talked about having the land appraised? Well, you're also going to have the house appraised. And what they'll do is they'll appraise the house based on the plans, and they'll loan you the money based on the value of the finished house itself plus the land. And at that point, you just start paying your mortgage payments 30 days after you close. Of course, that sounds all fine and good, but what you don't want to do is get too emotionally attached to the piece of property that you fall in love with it so much to the point where you don't do your due diligence. You've heard me say that. I'm like a broken record. You just want to do your homework. You want to make sure that if that property is in a heavily flooded area, you want to make sure that you're okay with it. And if it's in a heavily flooded area, you want to make sure you don't buy it if you don't want to deal with the heavy flood insurance that you're going to have to pay or the heavy flooding. Now the question you need to ask is, Wayne, how do I know what flood zone it's in? Typically the survey on the property will show you the flood zone of the property, but you got to make sure if it doesn't, then you need to get a flood elevation certificate on the property. Now, you don't necessarily have to get a flood elevation certificate on the property to find out the flood insurance. You can typically do that by going to the FEMA maps, Federal Emergency Management Agency. Y'all like that, didn't you? I got it right that time. Last time video, everybody was reprimanding me. But it's the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They'll tell you what flood zone the property's in. Now, as far as a elevation certificate, if it's in flood zone A, your mortgage company, that permanent loan I was telling you about, they're going to require that you have flood insurance because they want to make sure that the money they're loaning you, secured by a structure, an asset, they want to make sure if that thing floods, you've got flood insurance to put it back the way it was. Now, believe it or not, flood zones actually change. So if a survey, for example, we just sold a piece of property and it said it was in flood zone A. Well, that was from 20 years ago. And so the maps change and things change, and now it's in flood zone C. Now, whether or not you want to trust that, I don't really know. But I can tell you that if it's in flood zone C now, and it was in flood zone A, the mortgage company's not going to require that you have flood insurance. But I'm going to tell you, my personal experience, if you're in flood zone A, B, C, or X, and just because the mortgage company says you don't need flood insurance, still get flood insurance. Now look, to validate my point, if you're still with me, do me a favor, comment below and let me know if you know or have had personally dealt with a situation where you've had a property flood and you've had to put that thing back together. People need to know if they're going to be building a house or buying a house or making their homestead, whatever it may be. They need to know that if they're in flood zone A, B, or C, what are the actual consequences and what is the work that has to be put in to get that property back to the condition that it was originally in. Now look, most of the time they're not going to make you have the property surveyed, but if there's an old survey, you may want to get a new survey. You can pull the survey typically at your parish or county clerk of courts, registered of deeds office. That's free for you to pull those, and they may charge you $1 or $2 for a copy, but you can pull that information and actually see that survey. And from there, you'll want to walk the land. I can't emphasize enough. You'll want to walk the entire property, and don't go out there walking around in shorts. You'll be ate up with chiggers. And don't go out there in the wintertime without some sort of protection or anything like that, like bug spray or any personal protection. You're walking amongst the woods and the critters. there's all kind of animals, from feral hogs to fox to bears, you name it. So be prepared when you're going to walk your property. I always say that. But walk the property, know the property, watch the survey, follow, try to find the pins, get you a metal detector if need be, and stake the property and know and make sure that no one is encroaching upon the property that you're about to make your own. Now, if you're not sure how the process works, I'll explain really quick. The survey on a piece of property, whenever it's surveyed, they basically take the measurements of the property, whether it be 4 corners, 6 corners, 8 corners. I've seen property shaped like stop signs, believe it or not. And they will stake the property with metal stakes. They drive metal stakes down into the ground. And that's why I say you can go out there with a metal detector and oftentimes find those stakes that are driven into the ground. They call those the pins. You'll notice that on the survey. So if you don't have a good, clean survey, and it's 30, 40, 50 years old, it's not a bad idea to get a new survey. Now, here's a quick story about should you get a survey or not get a survey. I had a client that purchased a piece of property with a large tract of land, and they said, Wayne, do we really need a survey? And I said, well, technically there's not a good survey here. It's old, and I always suggest getting a new one. Now, you don't have to invest in a survey, and let me tell you, a survey is an investment because you'll know where everything begins and ends and what's going to be yours. And you want to make sure it's taken care of before it becomes yours. So long story short is, it was 4 acres of the neighbor's property that was encroaching, had cattle's fence, everything on the back of the property. They were able to get it worked out simply because they went to the current owner of the property that they were going to purchase and said, hey, this gentleman back here is encroaching on 4 acres. It's the seller's responsibility to make sure that's all taken care of. And you want to make sure they do it and not you do it. Now, you always heard me say this, the 2 basic things that you need to do is to get out and walk the property, but it's so important to talk to the neighbors. Get out and talk to the neighbors. Don't be afraid to pull in their driveway on a Saturday or Sunday and just ask them questions about the neighborhood, the questions about the area. Do they like it? How long have they lived there? What would they change? What would they make different? Would they repurchase that property if given the opportunity? They will tell you everything. Now, by everything, here's another quick story. I was at a property, house, land. Gentleman pulled in the driveway right behind me, and he said, are you the buyer? And I said, no, sir, I'm just looking around. He said, well, this place floods a lot. I said, well, I understood it's in flood zone A, which is a higher risk of it flooding. And he said, yeah, if you trek back through there, there's a creek, and that creek floods, and it floods a lot. This house has flooded several times. The point of the story is people are really helpful, and they will tell you whether you want to hear it or not. Now, the purpose in these videos and the stories that I share with you, so you don't make the same mistake that I've had clients over the years make, and I've just learned all this process. There's a lot more to it. There's restrictions and easements and covenants and title policy and mineral rights and all this other stuff, and we put that in other videos. I'll put a link to it right here. Until next time, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and give us a thumbs up if you've liked this video.